Well, we are talking this morning about our top story. The Senate passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act last night. 63 votes yes to 36. This just days before the United States is set to run out of money. The bill now heads to the president's desk, where he says he will sign it as soon as possible. Joining me right now is Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn. She's a member of the Judiciary, Finance, Commerce, and Veterans Affairs Committees. Senator, you voted against this bill. Good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. What was wrong with the bill from your standpoint?
Yes. Maria, I did not like the fact that it had a date certain it would end and not a dollar amount on our debt ceiling raise. And if you give somebody a date certain or a time limit, what are they going to do? They're going to pack as much as they can into that period of time. It's like people that do the grocery cart race, and they're given 2 minutes to fill up that cart with everything. They go for the most expensive things. They pile as much as they can before the time runs out. That is what I fear will happen with this, with no dollar amount set and the limit suspended. Also, the lack of funding for the military, the IRS agents that are still there, but nobody wants our nation to default on their debt. And I give Speaker McCarthy and those in the House a lot of credit for working through this and getting a bill and pushing it. It just was not something. I think that with the situation we are in right now, with $31.4 trillion worth of debt, and the burden that we are putting on our children and grandchildren, we have to do something about getting spending under control and getting inflation down. That is the imperative for people in Tennessee.
Yeah, let's go through a couple of the issues here in terms of the bill, because Biden's military budget doesn't fully fund the military, and these numbers that you're referring to underline that. We've got worries that China is marching to increase its Navy to 400 ships by 2025 and 440 ships by 2045. Meanwhile, the U.S. is not keeping pace in terms of the Navy. They've got a larger Navy than we do. The U.S. Navy right now, the budget takes the number of ships from 298 ships to 291. What can you do right now or in the coming months to actually try to increase spending in terms of defense and ensure that the U.S.'s defense is properly equipped with the threats that we face from communist China?
Yeah. That is right. And those concerns, that great power competition, that has to be at the top of the list. The aggressiveness and the expansion that China is doing, moving into Africa, going into Djibouti, trying to move into the Western Hemisphere. And you look at the power of that blue water Navy that they are building, and then you look at the Biden budget proposals, and what they're wanting to do is come in under the rate of inflation. And Maria, if we're at 2.7% of our GDP going into building our military, and China is putting 7% of their GDP, think about that delta between what they're spending and what we're spending. Look at our trade imbalance. We had nearly $1 trillion of a trade imbalance with China. They're exporting more to the United States and making more money than ever off of us, and then they're spending that money to build their military so they can defeat us and dominate us, so they can go into Taiwan, so they can bully the Philippines, the island nations. Maria, this is their goal. And we can't play their game. We have to play our game. And you've got to at least meet the rate of inflation if you're going to increase and work on rebuilding the military and not deprive them of what they need to push forward with these contracts to build our Navy, to move forward with hypersonics, and to build our Space Force.
Meanwhile, the story of the day on China is that China is exploring a new property support package to boost the economy in China. Government is working on a basket of support measures, according to Bloomberg this morning. That's why the Hong Kong stock market was up so much overnight because of all of this new spending that we're expecting to come out of China. And at the same time, you got Joe Biden focused on auditing American families. You know, the IRS money that was put in the Inflation Reduction Act is largely still there. You don't have much rescinding of that in this debt deal. So is there anything you can do in terms of holding back money to the IRS so that you don't get all of those 87,000 IRS agents auditing Americans next year?
Yes, the House will move forward with their appropriations bills, and Senator Susan Collins has worked very hard to make certain that the Appropriations Committee is going to bring all of these bills to the Senate floor so that we can have our say on these bills, amend these bills. And Maria, it is going to be so important for the House and the Senate to push these rescissions. As you know, I push those across the board cuts every single year, whether you want a 1%, 2%, 5%. Anybody can save a nickel out of a dollar. Our federal agencies need to do that. Rescinding this IRS money is important. Getting people back to work is going to be important. These federal employees that are still sitting in the bubble bath, working from home, or are working two jobs because they're working from home, that's got to stop. The U.S. taxpayer, hard-working American taxpayers cannot afford the lax work habits of so many federal government employees.
Well, the Senate also voting to kill President Biden's $400 billion student loan handout yesterday. Biden's expected to veto that, though, Senator. So where are we on that? Will the president continue to be able to forgive debt?
You're going to see a continued push, of course, the courts weighing in, and I led that amicus brief on this. When I talk to Tennesseans, and as I talk with some of my colleagues, people think it is just grossly unfair for them to have to pay their neighbor's student loan back. This is one of the things that people have spoken most loudly about because they see the unfairness in this. And what we're going to be able to do is continue to rescind those funds. The court agrees with us. The Senate has spoken. I think this is a veto you may see get overridden.
Wow. Senator, real quick here, I know you're demanding answers from the former chief of staff to President Obama and current Veteran Affairs Secretary Dennis McDonough about his involvement in the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. Tell me more. What is his role?
The FBI and the Durham report place him in the Situation Room in July of 2016 as they discussed pushing this forward. Now, this is someone who is currently leading the Department of Veterans Affairs. This is of concern to me, that someone who is leading a department who is supposed to be fair to all of our veterans would have been in a meeting where there was a discussion about weaponizing the FBI, the DOJ, against a private citizen who was running for president of the United States. And of course, as we know, the Russia collusion was a hoax. This is something Hillary Clinton made up. Then Hillary Clinton and her campaign paid someone to come up with the dossier and to implement this plan. They got DOJ and FBI doing the wink, wink, nod, nod, letting this go through, and the media to push this forward. So, Maria, think about what this did to our country. And it is imperative that we know if people that are currently in the administration were a part of cooking up this plot.
Yeah, a biggest story I've ever covered, biggest story the country has ever suffered, dividing this country massively. I know about the impact for sure. Senator, thank you so much for your work on this. Good to see you this morning.
You got it.